The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Andrew Clark's cozy Seattle home, casting soft stripes across the kitchen table. At 42, Andrew, an IT consultant with a knack for routine, sipped his black coffee while scrolling through work emails. Across from him, his 16-year-old daughter, Sophie, was glued to her laptop, her fingers dancing over the keyboard as she debugged code for a school project. The hum of the coffee maker and the faint chirping of sparrows outside filled the air, a typical Thursday in their suburban life. But at 8:47 a.m. a single notification shattered the calm. "Your account balance has fallen below the minimum threshold," Andrew's phone buzzed. He frowned, assuming it was a bank glitch. The account held $75,000, savings he and his wife, Emily, had painstakingly set aside for Sophie's college fund over a decade. They'd agreed it was untouchable, a sacred promise for their daughter's future. Logging into the bank app, Andrew's stomach plummeted. The balance wasn't low, it was zero. Not a cent remained. "Sophie, can you check if the Wi-Fi's acting up?" Andrew's voice trembled as he refreshed the page, praying for a different outcome. Sophie glanced up, her brow furrowing at his tone. "It's fine, Dad. What's going on?" Andrew hesitated, then admitted, "The college fund, it's gone." Sophie's eyes widened, but she stayed composed, sliding her laptop aside. "Show me." As Andrew handed her his phone, his hands shook. The transaction history painted a damning picture: $10,000 for a first-class flight to Miami, $8,000 at a five-star hotel, $5,000 at an upscale restaurant, and more, all within the past week. The charges were a spree of extravagance that clashed with their modest lifestyle. Andrew's mind raced. "This has to be fraud," he muttered, reaching for the bank's customer service number. But a darker thought crept in. Where was Emily? He dialed her phone. Straight to voicemail. "Emily, where are you?" "Call me back now," he said, his voice tight with panic. Sophie watched him closely, her sharp mind already piecing together clues. "Dad, Mom's been acting strange lately. She's been running errands a lot, but I caught her deleting texts last week. And she was dressed up, way too fancy for the grocery store." Andrew's heart sank. Emily had been distant, sure, but he chalked it up to work stress. Could she really? He pushed the thought aside and checked their joint credit card account. The evidence was undeniable: $2,000 at a spa in Palm Beach, $3,500 at a boutique in South Beach. The truth hit like a freight train. Emily wasn't a victim of fraud. She was the one spending their money. "Sophie, stay here," Andrew said, grabbing his car keys to check Emily's office downtown. But Sophie followed, her voice firm. "Dad, we need to face this together." At Emily's home office, the room was unnervingly tidy. No laptop, no purse, just the faint scent of her jasmine perfume lingering in the air. Andrew's phone buzzed again, a text from Emily's number. "I'm sorry, Andrew. I needed a change. Don't look for me." His knees buckled and he gripped the desk for support. Sophie caught his arm, her face a mix of anger and determination. "She left us," Andrew whispered, the words tasting like ash. Sophie's jaw tightened. "Not just left. She stole from us." Back in the kitchen, Sophie opened her laptop with purpose. "Dad, we can't just sit here. Let me check something." Andrew, still reeling, nodded absently as shock gave way to betrayal. Sophie's fingers flew as she navigated to Emily's cloud account, guessing her password, Sophie 2009, the same lazy combination Emily used for everything. "Got it," Sophie muttered, pulling up Emily's email. Andrew leaned over her shoulder, his heart pounding. The inbox was a goldmine of betrayal. Emails from Trevor Lawson dominated the screen, each dripping with charm. "Meet me in Miami, darling. We'll start fresh," one read. Another outlined a business venture that required initial funding, their $75,000. Attached were photos: Emily, radiant in a sundress, laughing on a yacht with a slick-looking man in his 40s, his arm around her. Andrew's vision blurred with rage and grief. "How could she do this to you?" he choked out, thinking of Sophie's dreams: MIT, a career in tech, all kindled by that fund. Sophie's voice was cold steel. "She didn't just betray us, Dad. This Trevor guy's a con man. Look at his email domain, it's a front for a shell company. I've seen this in my coding forums. He's scamming her and she's too blind to see it." Andrew shook his head, overwhelmed. "We need to call the police." Sophie hesitated, her eyes glinting with resolve. "Not yet. I can dig deeper. We can get the money back." Andrew stared at his daughter, torn between pride and fear. Sophie wasn't just smart, she was relentless, a trait she'd honed in coding competitions and late-night hackathons. But this wasn't a game. "Sophie, this is dangerous. Let the authorities handle it." She met his gaze, unyielding. "They'll take too long and the money will be gone. I can track their digital footprint, emails, transactions, everything." Trust me, Dad. Against his better judgment, Andrew nodded. Sophie dove into the data, cross-referencing Trevor's email with public records. Within an hour, she'd uncovered a trail. Trevor Lawson was an alias for a man linked to fake investment schemes across 3 states. He's been fleecing people for years, Sophie said, showing Andrew a forum post detailing Trevor's scams. Mom fell for his lies, but he's not getting away with our money. As night fell, Andrew sat in the dark living room replaying 18 years with Emily, her warm laugh, their late-night talks, the promises they'd made over cheap wine. How had it come to this? Sophie worked silently, her screen glowing with lines of code. I found their hotel in Miami, she announced. And Trevor's got an offshore account. I can't access it yet, but I'm close. Andrew's throat tightened. Sophie, if they find out you're digging. They won't, she said, her voice calm but fierce. I'm covering my tracks. Andrew wanted to stop her, to shield her from this mess, but Sophie's determination was unshakable. She wasn't just fighting for the money, she was fighting for their family. As he watched her work, a new fear crept in. What was Sophie capable of, and where would this path lead them? The glow of Sophie's laptop illuminated the darkened kitchen of the Clark family's Seattle home, casting sharp shadows across her focused face. It was past midnight, and Andrew sat slumped at the table, nursing a cold coffee, his mind tangled in the wreckage of Emily's betrayal. The sting of her text, I'm sorry, Andrew. I needed a change. Don't look for me, still burned. Sophie, however, was a whirlwind of purpose, her fingers racing across the keyboard as she dug deeper into the digital trail left by Emily and her conman lover, Trevor Lawson. Dad, you should sleep, Sophie said without looking up, her voice steady despite the late hour. Andrew shook his head. I can't. Not until we figure this out. He glanced at the screen, where lines of code and browser tabs multiplied. Sophie had already uncovered Trevor's alias and his history of scams, fake investment schemes that had fleeced dozens across 3 states. But the $75,000 from Sophie's college fund was still out there, slipping further away with every passing minute. Sophie clicked into a new tab, pulling up an encrypted messaging app. I found a backdoor into Trevor's email server, she said, her tone matter-of-fact, as if hacking into a criminal's account was just another school project. Andrew's stomach churned. Sophie, this isn't legal. If they trace this back to you, she cut him off, her eyes flicking to his. They won't. I'm routing everything through a VPN and a proxy. I'm invisible. Andrew wanted to argue, to pull her away from the laptop and call the police, but the fire in Sophie's gaze stopped him. She wasn't just his daughter anymore, she was a force, driven by a mix of fury and loyalty. Okay, he said reluctantly, but you tell me everything you find. No secrets. Sophie nodded, though her focus was already back on the screen. The emails she pulled up were a gut punch. Trevor's messages to Emily were a masterclass in manipulation. You deserve more than a boring life in Seattle, Emily. I'll give you the world. Another promised our investment will triple in a month. Trust me. Emily's replies were desperate, almost childlike. I'm all in, Trevor. I've wired the $75,000. Andrew's fists clenched. She threw away your future for the snake, he muttered. Sophie's expression hardened. She's not the only one he's scamming. She opened a folder labeled Prospects from Trevor's cloud drive, revealing correspondence with other victims, widows, retirees, even a small business owner, all lured by the same empty promises. He's running a Ponzi scheme, Sophie said. He uses new money to pay off old investors, keeping the cycle going. Our $75,000 is probably already gone. Andrew's heart sank, but Sophie's voice stayed sharp. Not entirely. I traced a transfer to an offshore account in the Caymans. It's locked, but I'm working on it. Andrew blinked, stunned. Working on it? Sophie, you're 16. How do you even know how to do this? She shrugged, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. YouTube tutorials, coding forums, and a lot of practice. You'd be surprised what you can learn online. Despite the gravity of the situation, Andrew felt a flicker of pride. Sophie had always been brilliant, first in her class, a star in coding competitions, but this was something else. She was outmaneuvering a career criminal. Still, the risks loomed large. If Trevor finds out, he could come after us, Andrew warned. Sophie's smirk faded. That's why we need to move fast. By 2 a.m., Sophie had pieced together more of Trevor's operation. Using a phishing trick, she'd accessed his messaging app, revealing real-time chats with Emily. The latest one, timestamped an hour ago, made Andrew's blood run cold. Don't worry, babe. The Seattle money's safe. We'll be in Barbados by next week. Emily's reply was giddy. I can't wait to leave it all behind. Andrew slammed his fist on the table. She's talking about us like we're nothing. Sophie's face was unreadable, but her fingers moved faster. She's in too deep, she said quietly. But Trevor's the real problem. If we take him down, we might get the money back. Andrew leaned forward, his voice low. How? The police need evidence and we can't just hand them your whatever this is. He gestured at her laptop, wary of calling it hacking. Sophie's eyes gleamed with a plan. We don't need to give them everything. I'll create a trail, anonymous tips, leaked emails, bank records. The police will think they found it themselves. But first, I need to shake Trevor up. Andrew frowned. Shake him up? What does that mean? Sophie hesitated, then explained. I'm going to send him a fake FBI alert, make him think he's being watched. If he panics, he'll make mistakes. Andrew's pulse quickened. That's playing with fire, Sophie. He's dangerous. She nodded, but her resolve didn't waver. I know. But if we don't act, he'll disappear with our money and Mom. The word Mom hung heavy in the air. Andrew realized Sophie wasn't just angry, she was hurt, grappling with the same betrayal he felt. Okay, he said softly. But we do this together. Sophie spent the next hour crafting a spoofed email mimicking an FBI template she'd found on a cybersecurity blog. The message was chillingly official. Trevor Lawson, you are under investigation for wire fraud and money laundering. Cease all activity and contact authorities immediately. She routed it through a burner account, ensuring it couldn't be traced. This'll spook him, she said, hitting send. Minutes later, Trevor's messaging app lit up with frantic texts to Emily, something's wrong. We need to move the money now. Emily's response was panicked. What? You said we were safe. Sophie watched the exchange, her expression grim. He's rattled. That's step 1. Andrew felt a chill. What's step 2? Sophie's answer was cryptic. We make sure he can't run. By dawn, Sophie had pulled bank records showing Trevor's transfers, including their $75,000 funneled through a maze of shell companies. She forwarded snippets to an anonymous tip line for the Seattle PD, careful to strip any trace of her involvement. They'll start digging soon, she said. Andrew rubbed his eyes, exhaustion battling with awe. You're sure they can't trace this back to us? Sophie nodded. I'm using Tor. It's untraceable. As the first rays of sunlight crept into the kitchen, Andrew's phone rang. His heart stopped when he saw the caller ID, Emily. Sophie froze, her eyes locked on the screen. Answer it, she said, her voice low. Andrew hesitated, then hit accept, putting it on speaker. Emily, what do you want? He said, his tone colder than he intended. Andrew, please, Emily's voice cracked, frantic and tearful. I'm in trouble. Trevor, something's wrong. He's acting paranoid, saying we're being watched. I didn't mean for this to happen. Andrew's anger flared. You stole Sophie's future for some con man and now you're surprised it's falling apart? You made your choice. Emily sobbed. I know I messed up, but I'm scared. Help me, please. Sophie's face was stone. She leaned toward the phone. You left us, Mom. You don't get to beg now. Emily's sobs grew louder. Sophie, honey, I'm still your mother. Sophie's voice was ice. Not anymore. Andrew ended the call, his chest tight. He looked at Sophie, expecting tears, but her eyes were dry, burning with purpose. She's not our problem, Sophie said, turning back to her laptop. Trevor is. Andrew nodded, but unease gnawed at him. Sophie's brilliance was saving them, but her cold resolve was unsettling. As she typed, plotting the next move, Andrew wondered, was he protecting his daughter or unleashing something he couldn't control? The Seattle dawn painted the Clark family's kitchen in pale gold, but the air was thick with tension. Andrew sat at the table, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night, watching Sophie work her laptop like a maestro conducting a symphony. Her fake FBI email had rattled Trevor Lawson, the con man who'd fleeced their $75,000 college fund, and now she was orchestrating the next move. Emily's desperate call hours ago, begging for help after abandoning them, lingered like a ghost, but Sophie's focus was unshaken, her resolve a blade honed by betrayal. Dad, I need you to check the bank app again, Sophie said, not looking up from her screen. See if any funds have moved. Andrew nodded, though his hands trembled as he logged in. The account was still empty, but a new pending transaction caught his eye, a $50,000 deposit labeled return transfer. His breath caught. Sophie, there's money coming back. 50 grand. Did you? She glanced over, her expression guarded. Not yet. That's Trevor panicking. He's trying to cover his tracks. Andrew's heart raced. You mean he's sending our money back? Sophie shook her head. Not exactly. He's moving it to a new account, probably to dodge the FBI. I intercepted the transfer and redirected it to us. Andrew stared, dumbfounded. Intercepted? Sophie, she cut him off. It's our money, Dad. I'm just taking it back. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with defiance, daring him to argue. He didn't. The line between right and wrong was blurring, but Sophie's logic was ironclad. This was their future, stolen by Emily and Trevor. Still, Andrew's unease grew. Sophie was 16, a high schooler, yet she was outsmarting a career criminal with chilling precision. How do you even do that? He asked, half in awe, half in dread. Sophie shrugged, her fingers still flying. Fished his bank login from a fake alert page. He's sloppy when he's scared. By 7 a.m., Sophie had confirmed the $50,000 was secure in their account, untraceable to her actions. She'd also sent more anonymous tips to the Seattle PD, screenshots of Trevor's offshore transfers, his fake company records, and his chats with Emily. The police are already investigating, she said, showing Andrew an encrypted police scanner feed she'd tapped into. They're pulling his financials today. Andrew's jaw dropped. You're listening to the police? It's public access, Sophie said, though her faint smirk suggested otherwise. Point is, Trevor's running out of time. Andrew leaned back, overwhelmed. Sophie wasn't just fighting back, she was setting a trap and Trevor was stumbling right into it. But the stakes were climbing. What if he figures out it's us? Andrew asked. Sophie's smirk faded. He won't. I'm making sure every trail leads somewhere else. Sophie's plan was audacious, keep Trevor paranoid with more fake alerts while feeding the police just enough to close in. She crafted another spoofed message, this time from a Cayman Bank security team, warning Trevor his account was frozen pending an audit. This'll push him to bolt, she explained. When he does, he'll slip up and the cops will be waiting. Andrew nodded, but his gut twisted. And Mom? What happens to her? Sophie's hands paused over the keyboard, her face unreadable. She chose him, Dad. She's not our problem. The words were cold, but Andrew saw a flicker of pain in her eyes. Emily's betrayal had cut Sophie deeper than she'd admit, and this trap wasn't just about the money, it was about justice. Andrew reached for her hand, but she pulled away, diving back into her work. By noon, Trevor's messaging app was chaos. Texts to Emily screamed panic, the bank's onto us. We need to leave now. Emily's replies were frantic. You said this was safe. What do I do? Trevor's response was brutal, figure it out. I'm not babysitting you. Andrew's anger flared. He's throwing her under the bus. Sophie nodded, her voice low. Good. She'll crack first. Sophie's prediction was spot on. At 2 p.m., Emily called again, her voice a wreck. Andrew put it on speaker, his heart pounding. Andrew, I'm begging you, Emily sobbed. Trevor's losing it. He says the FBI's after him and he's blaming me. I didn't know he was a crook, I swear. Andrew's voice was ice. You stole Sophie's future, Emily. You wired our money to that snake. Don't play innocent. Emily's sobs grew louder. I was stupid, okay? I thought he loved me. Sophie leaned in, her tone venomous. You thought wrong, Mom. You picked him over us. Now you're stuck. Emily gasped. Sophie, please, I'm your mother. Sophie's eyes narrowed. Not anymore. Tell Trevor the truth, that you're done. Maybe the police will go easy on you. Andrew ended the call, his chest tight. Sophie's words were a blade, but he couldn't blame her. Emily had made her bed. Sophie turned back to her laptop, pulling up a live map tracking Trevor's phone, another trick she'd learned from a coding forum. He's still in Miami, but he's moving. Probably booking a flight. Andrew's pulse spiked. You're tracking his phone? Sophie, this is too much. She didn't flinch. It's not. I'm sending the cops his location. They'll catch him before he boards. By evening, Sophie's trap was tightening. She'd leaked Trevor's travel plans to the police via another anonymous tip, complete with his alias and flight details. The scanner buzzed with activity, officers were coordinating at Miami International Airport. Andrew watched Sophie, her face lit by the screen, and felt a mix of awe and fear. She was brilliant, but her ruthlessness was new, forged in the fire of Emily's betrayal. At 8 p.m., Sophie's phone pinged, a secure message from her tip line. She read it, then turned to Andrew, her voice steady. The police have Trevor's hotel under surveillance. They're moving in tonight. Andrew exhaled, relief warring with dread. And the rest of the money? Sophie's lips twitched. I'm still working on the last $25,000. It's tied up in his Cayman account. I'll get it. Andrew nodded, but a new worry gnawed at him. Sophie's skills were saving them, but at what cost? She was waging a war against a criminal and winning, but her cold detachment was unsettling. Sophie, he said softly, when this is over, we need to talk. About you. About this? She met his gaze, her expression softening for the first time. I know, Dad. But right now, we finish this. As night fell, the scanner crackled with updates, suspect spotted at hotel. Units in position. Sophie closed her laptop, her face calm but fierce. It's almost over, she said. Andrew nodded, but his heart raced. Trevor was cornered, Emily was crumbling, and Sophie's trap was closing. But what would happen when the dust settled? Would his daughter still be the girl he knew, or had this fight changed her forever? The Seattle night was heavy with anticipation. The Clark family's kitchen bathed in the dim glow of Sophie's laptop. Andrew paced, his nerves frayed, while Sophie monitored a police scanner feed, her face a mask of calm intensity. Her trap for Trevor Lawson, the conman who'd stolen their $75,000 college fund, was closing fast. The Seattle PD, tipped off by Sophie's anonymous leaks, had Trevor's Miami hotel under surveillance, ready to pounce. Emily's betrayal, her affair with Trevor, and theft of Sophie's future hung over them like a storm cloud, but Sophie's focus was razor-sharp, her plan nearing its climax. "Any updates?" Andrew asked, his voice hoarse from hours of tension. Sophie glanced at the scanner feed, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "They're in position. Trevor's still in the hotel, but he's booked a red-eye to Barbados. He's desperate." Andrew's stomach churned. Sophie had already recovered $50,000 by redirecting Trevor's panicked transfer, but the remaining $25,000 was locked in an offshore account. More than that, he worried about Sophie, her cold resolve, her willingness to skirt the law. She was winning, but at what cost? Sophie's phone pinged, a secure message from her anonymous tip line. "Police are moving in," she said, her voice steady. "They've got his room number and a warrant." Andrew stopped pacing, his heart pounding. "And Emily?" Sophie's expression darkened. "She's with him. She'll go down too." Andrew nodded, torn between anger and pity. Emily's tearful call earlier, begging for help, had stirred old feelings, but her choice to abandon them for Trevor was unforgivable. As the scanner crackled with updates, units at the door, preparing to breach, Sophie leaned back, her work done for now. "They'll have him soon," she said, but her eyes stayed glued to the screen. Andrew sat beside her, his voice low. "Sophie, you've done enough. Let the police handle the rest." She shook her head, a faint smirk playing on her lips. "Not until I get the last of our money." Before Andrew could protest, a new alert flashed on her laptop, a login attempt on Trevor's offshore account. "He's trying to move the $25,000, Sophie muttered, her fingers flying. Using a phishing page she'd set up earlier, she captured his credentials and logged in herself. The account balance glowed on the screen, $27,500. "Got it," she said, initiating a transfer back to their bank. Andrew's jaw dropped. "You're stealing it back?" Sophie's eyes met his, unflinching. "It's ours, Dad. I'm just fixing her mistake." Andrew's unease deepened. Sophie's skills were breathtaking, but her moral lines were blurring. "Sophie, this could get you in trouble," he warned. She shrugged. "The bank won't care who sent it, and Trevor won't be around to complain." As the transfer completed, the scanner erupted, suspect in custody. Female accomplice detained. Sophie closed her laptop, her face unreadable. "It's done." But it wasn't. At 11 p.m. a loud knock jolted them. Andrew froze, his pulse spiking. Sophie checked her phone's security app linked to cameras she'd installed around the house. "It's Trevor," she whispered, her voice tight. Andrew's blood ran cold. "How? You said he was arrested." Sophie's eyes widened. "He must have slipped the cops in Miami. He's here." The knocking turned to pounding, Trevor's voice roaring through the door. "Open up, Clark. I know your kid's behind this." Andrew grabbed Sophie, pulling her toward the back door. "We're calling 911. But Sophie stood her ground, her hand slipping into her pocket. "Wait. I've got this." She tapped her phone, activating a hidden system she'd coded, a network of cameras and microphones rigged to record and stream to a secure cloud. "Let him talk," she said, her voice steady. "He'll bury himself." Andrew hesitated, fear warring with trust. The pounding grew louder, Trevor's voice venomous. "Your little hacker ruined everything. You think you can outsmart me?" Sophie motioned for Andrew to open the door, whispering, "Keep him talking. My system's recording." Andrew's heart hammered, but he trusted her. He cracked the door, staying behind it. "What do you want, Trevor?" Trevor, disheveled and wild-eyed, shoved his way in, reeking of sweat and desperation. "You and your kid crossed the wrong guy," he snarled, stepping into the living room. "I lost everything because of her." Andrew raised his hands, his voice calm but firm. "You stole our money, Trevor. You and Emily. This is on you." Trevor laughed, a bitter edge to it. "Emily? She's done. Cops have her, and I'm not going down alone." Sophie stepped forward, her phone in hand, her voice icy. "You're already done, Trevor. Everything you're saying is being recorded and sent to the police." Trevor's eyes darted to her, rage twisting his face. "You little," he lunged, but Sophie was ready. She hit a button on her phone, triggering a piercing alarm from hidden speakers. Trevor stumbled, clutching his ears as red and blue lights flashed outside, police alerted by Sophie's system. Officers burst in, tackling Trevor to the floor. "You're under arrest for breaking and entering, fraud, and extortion," one barked, cuffing him. Trevor thrashed, shouting, "You'll pay for this," but the fight was over. Sophie handed an officer a USB drive with her recordings, her face calm. "This has everything, his threats, his confessions." The officer nodded, impressed. "We'll take it from here." As the police hauled Trevor away, Andrew pulled Sophie into a hug, his voice shaking. "You scared the hell out of me." She hugged back, her voice soft. "I had to end it, Dad." But her eyes were distant, haunted by the weight of what she'd done. The $75,000 was back, Trevor was in custody, and Emily was facing charges, but the victory felt hollow. Their family was broken, and Sophie's brilliance had come at a price. By midnight, the house was quiet again, the police gone. Andrew sat with Sophie, his voice gentle. "You were incredible, but this can't be your life, Sophie. You're 16. She nodded, her guard lowering. "I know. I just couldn't let him win." Andrew squeezed her hand. "He didn't. You did. But we need to heal now." Sophie's eyes glistened, the first crack in her armor. "Yeah. Together." As they sat in the silence, Andrew knew the fight wasn't over. Emily's trial loomed, and Sophie's actions, however justified, might have consequences. But for now they'd won. Trevor was gone, the money was back, and they had each other. Outside, the Seattle rain began to fall, washing away the chaos of the night, but Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that Sophie's path was only beginning. The Seattle rain had stopped, leaving a crisp morning stillness over the Clark family's home. Andrew stood at the kitchen counter, brewing coffee, the familiar ritual grounding him after weeks of chaos. Sophie sat at the table, her laptop closed for the first time in days, her eyes tracing the grain of the wood. Trevor Lawson, the conman who'd stolen their $75,000 college fund, was behind bars. Emily, Andrew's wife and Sophie's mother, faced charges for her role in the scam. The money was back, but the scars of betrayal lingered, and Andrew wondered if his daughter, his brilliant, fierce 16-year-old, could ever be the same. It had been a week since Trevor's arrest in their living room, his threats captured by Sophie's ingenious security system. The police had praised her, calling her recordings a prosecutor's dream. Trevor faced 7 years for fraud, extortion, and money laundering, his empire of lies crumbled by a teenager's cunning. Emily, detained in Miami, had pleaded guilty to wire fraud, hoping for leniency. Her lawyer called Andrew begging for a character statement, but he refused. "She made her choice," he'd said, hanging up. Sophie had been quiet since that night, her usual fire dimmed. Andrew set a mug of coffee before her, his voice gentle. "You okay, kiddo?" She nodded, but her eyes were distant, haunted by the weight of what she'd done. "I keep thinking about Mom," she admitted. "Not the one who left, but the one who used to make pancakes and cheer at my coding competitions." Andrew's chest tightened. He'd been so consumed by anger, he'd forgotten Sophie was grieving too. He sat across from her, choosing his words carefully. "She was that person once, Sophie. But she changed. What she did, stealing your future, choosing Trevor, that's on her, not you." Sophie's lips trembled, the first crack in her armor. "I know. But I keep wondering if I pushed too hard. The fake FBI emails, the bank transfers, what if I just let the police handle it?" Andrew reached for her hand, this time holding firm when she tried to pull away. "You saved us, Sophie. You got our money back. You stopped a criminal. Don't carry her mistakes." Sophie's eyes glistened, but she nodded, squeezing his hand. "I just want to move on, Dad. Start over." Andrew smiled, a flicker of hope breaking through. "We will. Together." The word felt like a promise, one he'd fight to keep. But he knew healing wouldn't be easy. Sophie's brilliance had saved them, but it had also exposed a ruthlessness that worried him. She was 16, not a vigilante, and he needed to guide her back to a normal life. The next day, Andrew made a decision. "We're leaving Seattle," he announced over breakfast. Sophie looked up from her toast, surprised. "Where to?" Andrew took a deep breath. "Portland. It's close enough to feel familiar, but far enough to leave this mess behind. New house, new school, new start." Sophie's face softened, a rare smile tugging at her lips. "Portland's got a great tech scene. I could intern at a startup." Andrew chuckled, relieved to see her spark returning. "One step at a time, kid." They spent the next month preparing, packing up their lives while dodging reporters eager for the teen genius story. Sophie refused interviews, wanting no spotlight on her actions. "I did what I had to," she told Andrew. "I don't need a medal." He respected her choice, but privately he was proud. She'd outsmarted a con man, protected their future, and stayed humble. Still, he kept a close eye on her, watching for signs of the cold resolve that had surfaced during their fight. In Portland, they settled into a modest bungalow with a view of the Willamette River. Sophie enrolled in a new high school with an advanced STEM program, her eyes lighting up at the prospect of coding competitions. But Andrew saw her hesitation, the shadow of Emily's betrayal. One evening, as they unpacked, he found her staring at an old family photo, Andrew, Emily, and a younger Sophie laughing at a picnic. "You miss her," he said softly. Sophie nodded, her voice small. Not the person she is now, but who she was. Andrew pulled her into a hug, his heart aching. "It's okay to miss that. It doesn't mean you forgive her." Sophie buried her face in his shoulder, finally letting tears fall. "I just want to be me again, Dad. Not the girl who hacks banks or traps con men." Andrew held her tighter. "You're still you, Sophie. The smartest, bravest kid I know. And I'm here to help you find your way." Inspired by their fresh start, Sophie channeled her skills into something positive. She joined a school cybersecurity club and pitched a startup idea, an app to detect phishing scams like the ones Trevor used. "I want to stop people like him," she told Andrew, her passion reignited. He supported her, helping with paperwork and even taking a job at a Portland tech firm to fund her prototype. Watching her present her app at a school showcase, Andrew felt a surge of pride. Sophie wasn't just healing, she was thriving. Emily's trial came and went, a quiet affair in Miami. She received 3 years probation and a hefty fine, her dreams of a lavish life with Trevor reduced to ashes. She wrote Sophie a letter apologizing and begging to reconnect, but Sophie didn't reply. Maybe someday, she told Andrew, but not now. He nodded, respecting her boundaries. Emily had broken their trust, and rebuilding it would take time if it ever happened at all. One spring evening, Andrew and Sophie sat on their porch watching the sunset over Portland's skyline. Sophie was coding on her tablet, her face lit with focus, but she paused to lean against him. "This feels right," she said, her voice soft. Andrew smiled, his arm around her. "Yeah, it does." The pain of Seattle was fading, replaced by a quiet strength. Sophie was still his daughter, brilliant, fierce, and human. She'd fought for their future and won, but now she was learning to live for herself. As the stars emerged, Andrew knew challenges lay ahead: Sophie's startup, her teenage years, the echoes of Emily's betrayal. But they'd face them together as a family rebuilt on trust and resilience. Sophie's path was hers to choose, and Andrew would be there, every step of the way, to guide her toward a future brighter than any con man could steal.